welcome you all to our second week of Think Better, Live Better. Now, before we get started, I know I'm a week late. Last week was Father's Day. Dads, I told you, didn't the water slide not look awesome? I may have gone down a few too many times, but it's open for you, all right? Weather was looking great. But in all honesty, I want to take a moment right now, not just for fathers from Father's Day, but moms, dads, any influential figure over any teen, whether you're in person or online. I just want to say thank you. As a youth pastor, I know personally what this past year has done for our teens mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and so anytime I hear of a parent or an adult investing in teenagers, it just gives me so much hope and encouragement. So from me to you, sincerely, thank you. I want to start off, very typical, I want to start off today with a question. I do have a question for you. What was your go-to end of day TV dinner show that you watched? Whether it was with a family, a group of friends, what did you look forward to? Maybe it was a specific night of the week. You knew that it would always stream this one show, whether you were at the dinner table or at the end of the day. You can put it in the chat, let us know what TV show you watched. But anyone in the crowd, are you willing to unashamedly scream, what was your TV show? Yeah? Okay, we had an X-Files last service, so nothing's off limits, all right? We had X-Files, we had Jeopardy. Anyone at all? Friends, okay. I know it's debate, people don't love Friends. I love Friends, and personally, I'll always be there for you. So I want to tell you that for me, Monday night, I don't know why I was obsessed with 24, with Jack Bauer. I just loved it. I was intrigued by everything about it. I thought he was the coolest dude ever, and I remember distinctly, I don't know if it was a bad grade or me back talking to my parents, but they grounded me. It wasn't, you can't go to practice. It wasn't like you can't go to your friend's house. It was Monday night, and all they said was, after dinner, we'll see you in the morning. Like, I couldn't watch. That was my punishment, not to be able to watch 24. Wednesday night was kind of a combo deal for me because the greatest show in the history of television was on Survivor. The 41st season coming on this fall. Very excited about it. And also Lost. If there's any Lost fans out there, if you have any ideas or theories about the last episode, come talk to me, okay? Whenever there was a night where there wasn't a specific TV show, my family, my parents, and my siblings, we would always watch classic reruns of two very, I love these shows. One was Andy Griffith and All in the Family with Archie Bunker. My dad thought Archie Bunker was the most ridiculous but hilarious person ever. And I can't tell you why, I don't have a justification, but there was a season in my life where I really enjoyed, kind of embarrassing, I enjoyed Deal or No Deal. I don't like Howie Mandel that much. Thinks he's awesome. He could rock a bald head better than me. But I just loved Deal or No Deal. And for anyone who doesn't understand the show or you're not familiar with it, I want to talk you through one of my favorite episodes, okay? Typically, on Deal or No Deal, a contestant faces a board of 26 briefcases, all right? And these cases range all the way from 1 penny to $1 million. And their goal is to pick one case. That case stays with them, and that's the case that they believe contains $1 million. Their goal, obviously, walk away with as much money as possible. So they pick a case, but between each round, there's this notorious character called the banker. And after each round, the banker will present them offers to try to buy them out to keep them from going further. And I want to tell you about my favorite contestant, Luis Green. All right, put a picture of Luis on the screen. Luis Green was on cloud nine the entire show. He was on fire, jumping around, doing jumping jacks. He was so excited to be there. And Luis started off by picking case number 10. I don't know what your lucky number is. His was number 10, okay? And his first 6 cases, I want to explain to you what they were. His first 6 cases, save that picture for later. His first 6 cases, his first one, $750. So he got that out of the way, a low one, feeling good, okay? His second case, $500,000. So it's like right off the bat, got a big dollar amount that he didn't want off the board. Third case, $75,000. Could be worse. It sounds like a lot, but there's a lot larger numbers. Fourth case, $50,000. Fifth case, $500. He's feeling good. Sixth case, what do you think it was? $1 million. Sixth case was $1 million. He was just shot in the heart, so devastated. And after the first round, the banker presents him with an offer of $12,000. Now, show of hands, how many of you in that scenario would take the $12,000 and walk out the door? bunch of greed in this room, and I love it. I'm right there with you. We don't take no for an answer, okay? Now, if you put up that previous picture, Luis, he had a lot of options still on the board. He had $10,000, 25, 100, 200, 300, 400. He even had $750,000, okay? Now, Luis Green, for majority of us, he didn't take the $12,000. He continued, and he had one heck of a run. In fact, it got to the point to where Luis only had 2 cases left, and I want to show you his final board. He had a case with him and a case on the stage. His 2 final cases, show the next picture, it's $5, $750,000. You can feel the tension in the room, right? Luis, he's what they call a believer. Like, he knew from the moment that he had $750,000. And the banker's a smart player. The banker offered Luis Green to leave for this amount, $333,000. Now, I joked about the $12,000, but how many of you actually, no questions asked, you're taking the $333,000 out? You know you're walking home with $300,000+. If your spouse isn't raising their hand, give them a nudge, a slap, walk out, whatever you want. You have permission, okay? Now, if you're hesitant about that amount, let me tell you a couple things you can purchase with this money, okay? You could buy 3.5 2021 Range Rovers. You could send 2 kids out of state tuition to Penn State, whereas Ohio State, aka Bryan's school, it's a bit cheaper. I say you get what you pay for when it comes to education. See you guys. Season tickets for Eagles. You could buy them for the next 192 years. Who knows? Maybe they'll win another Super Bowl, probably not. You could pay for over 180 kids to go on a missions trip with me, but if you give, you obviously have to pray as well. Next year with our high school ministry, or most importantly, you could support your local youth pastor. My Venmo will be on the screen at the end of the service, okay? Long story short, Luis Green is on stage and his family is standing there screaming, "Take it, take it, take it." The crowd just rises. Take the deal, take the deal. So Luis Green looks at Howie, looks at his family, looks at the TV, looks at the banker and just says, "No deal." The crowd groans in expectation. The crowd is just like expecting the absolute worst. They don't know what to think at all. And as you can imagine, suspenseful music plays in the background. Howie Mandel looks at Luis Green and says, "Luis Green, you have turned down $333,000 and you are going home with," I need you all, audience drum roll. Come on. You're going home with $5. Now, there were articles afterwards why Luis Green still feels like a rich man. That's bullcrap. Not at all. He regrets every moment of that show. And what I loved about that show, other than I get to watch someone else suffer and not myself, is that I got to see, as you would if you watched it, Luis Green, he learned the hard way. He learned the very unfortunate way, the practical punishment of not letting what truly is enough actually be enough in that moment. And I want to shift that specifically to you and I's perspective of what enough truly is, more directly when it comes to who God is rather than who we wish he was. Because what I want to talk to you about today, it isn't just a verse to remember, but it's rather a name that God has held and wishes to be known by so that we can be confident when it comes to who he is, both when we have little and when we have plenty. I think you'd all agree with me that the culture we live in, nothing is rarely enough because we've naturally adapted to this mindset that fill in the blank, more is always better, right? And that's not a bad thing. Trust me, it's not a bad thing. It can be great for motivation. It can be great for getting things done, checking things off the boxes, being productive, climbing up the ladder. But with how easily we can always be wanting more, we can also very easily begin to label things that were the best things ever and everything we always wanted and super incredible. We can begin to label those things as average or below or just not enough. And that's why I love the proverb that we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to jump into why we're here, why you're sitting in the seats, and why we're talking about this series right now. Proverbs 8:10 is going to be on the screen, and it very simply says, to choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold, for wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can compare with her. And that's what we're doing this morning. We're seeking instruction and knowledge as we pursue wisdom. And that being said, the section of Proverbs, I'm talking about Proverbs 30, what I want to look at today, it's very unique. It's unique in that it refers to a man named Agur, A-G-U-R, who is not mentioned anywhere else in the entire Bible. This one proverb is his shout out, his one noted piece of history, which is why there's such an emphasis as to what it is that he's saying. Now, a little context, Agur is a prophet of King Solomon, the wisest man in the Bible, and Agur is deemed worthy to contribute to this book of Proverbs with what he says in Proverbs 30. So look at the screen, or it should also be on your app online. But verse 5, he starts off by saying this. Every word of God is flawless. He's a shield to those who take refuge in him. Do not add to his words, or he will rebuke you and prove you a liar. And the reason I like this is he's already starting off by saying, don't add anything. You see God? You see what he says? Stop adding to his word. Remember, we're the ones created in his image. He needs to stop. We need to stop trying to, make him in ours. Verse 7 and 8, 2 things I ask of you. Lord, do not refuse me before I die. Here they are. Keep falsehood and lies far from me. Then give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Give me only my daily bread. When I recently read that, I just couldn't stop thinking about verse 8. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but only my daily bread. I want to ask you, when's the last time you didn't ask for what you wanted, but only what you needed? Now I want to title today's message, Enough is Enough. Like enough actually is enough. And something I've noted, side note, when you create and prepare a message and you're looking at the word enough for a whole week, you're convinced it's misspelled all the time. It sounds weird, it looks weird. I'm not convinced of the English language. But what I want to ask you is, what happens when your idea of not enough transitions to how you view the things in your life, such as your paycheck, your job, your marriage, your life, yourself, and even your faith? When not enough becomes your perspective, or the filter of your perspective, your self-esteem, what you see in the mirror, not enough. The love you used to have for your spouse, not enough. The opinions of people that you do trust, they're not enough. The gifts, talents, dreams, desires that God gave you becomes in your mind as you've convinced yourself, not enough. And ultimately God himself becomes not enough for you. And it doesn't take long for you and I to arrive at this place in our faith where we wonder, how did I get here? Where has God gone, and why am I this dissatisfied with so many things? Why is nothing enough? That's exactly how the Israelites felt when they were wandering in the desert. And that's why Proverbs 30, Agur's language is so specific when he says, put it up again, verse 8, to give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Now, today's message is intentionally different. I want to show you how over the course of history, God has creatively and specifically revealed who he is full circle to those who are willing to let him be enough. And I want to walk you through that, okay? In the Old Testament, specifically Exodus 16, God leads a man named Moses to rescue the Israelites from Egypt out of slavery and corruption into the promised land. So they're wandering in the desert, they're out of slavery, they're not treated the way they used to be treated, they're not corrupted, they're in their freedom, but ultimately their freedom isn't enough. They become frustrated in their freedom. They start complaining to Moses, we're tired, we're hungry, we're lost, we're annoyed, which I'm sure is going to be sounding like your cars next week into the shore as you drive your kids there, right? With the Israelites complaining, God had an interesting way of showing who he was by the way that he provided. The way God provided was by giving them just enough bread. Just enough bread every single day. This was called the giving of manna. Literally, people would wake up each morning and there would be just enough bread on the ground for them for that day, meaning that if they ever gathered too much or tried to, get some extra for the following day, when they woke up the next morning, that bread would be moldy, gross, dirty, not able to be eaten. So each day they would wake up and gather just enough. And over the course of 40 years, not a week, not a month, not a year, 40 years, God presented himself to these people as someone that they could trust to provide what? Exactly enough. Maybe not what they wanted, maybe not what they would have chosen, but exactly what they needed, their daily bread. What I love is that the original Hebrew word for God and the way that he provides is the word jireh, J-I-R-E-H. And so over time, when God came through with what they needed, with what was truly enough, they would acknowledge, God, you are Jehovah Jireh, you're a provider, as a declaration of God, you are enough. And again, for 40 years, These people came to know and to declare God. And they learned to believe something very, very encouraging, which I think we all need to take grasp of. They learned to say and believe that with whatever I'm going through, that's real, but so is he. Whatever I'm going through, God, you are enough. With what I'm struggling with, God, you are enough. Regardless of how I feel in this moment, God, you are enough. And I want to ask, have you ever had so little or felt so depleted that you had nothing else but God? Have you been to that place? When I was a freshman in college, I remember I was going to see a friend at a football game, and I was driving on the way back. I had a big white Tahoe. Her name was Big Bertha. She was great. Now I drive a small Honda Accord, which is great, but I'm just too big for a small car. And I was driving back, and I remember I'm on a 4-lane highway. I'm in the inside lane, and have you ever caught yourself just slowly drifting and then you quickly correct? Yeah? About 3 seconds away, I see a car from oncoming traffic on the inside lane. There's no median or barrier. They kind of go over. I'm like, oh, they're going to self-correct soon. They come closer, and the guy fell asleep at the wheel, 60 miles an hour. Last second, everything goes black. I'm hours away from my school, from my family. Just gotta take a second to breathe. And then I remember it feeling like my first words were no. It sounds funny, but I literally said, that didn't just happen. Because I woke up and I just remember unbuckling my seatbelt. I think I have a picture of the car, but the airbags didn't go off. I didn't know where I was, what was happening. It took my dad 4 hours to get to me. That was tough. That sucked. And then the other situation was losing a student that was really close to me. One of the most difficult times for our immediate community, our students and myself, to have to go through. And for both of those, 1, getting a glass of water after this. 2, just gonna read so I don't mess it up. For both of those, no answer, no justification. You can take that picture off. No answer, no justification, no pain meds, no distraction. I need you to hear this. No distraction was enough from the pain and the realness of those things in my life. Nothing was enough for me in those times except God who became Jireh to me, the God who provided what only he could. And I've learned something that I want to share with you. It isn't in the busyness, the success, or the culmination of the things you achieve where you experience God's goodness the most. It's when you have nothing. It's when you feel like nothing. It's when nothing else will do. And it's in that pain that if you do choose God, that's when he can finally have the place that he's been wanting all along, where he can be Jireh for you. And when I say the phrase just enough, I don't want you to ever see that as settling in any way. Don't mistake God giving you only what you need to be less than what you think you could do on your own. Because my belief is that that's why you and myself, that's why we're so tired all the time. That's why we're so frustrated all the time. That's why we have no answers. That's why we just keep running ourselves into the ground, because we keep trying to do everything our own. And God, Jireh, is just waiting for his place. He's waiting for that not enough space. And that's why Agar's words are so powerful in Proverbs 30, because he goes on. Verses 8 and 9, put on the screen. It says, but give me only my daily bread. Verse 9, otherwise I may have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. So here Agar is saying, God, give me only what I need, not in the name of humbleness or self-pride, but because if I do have too much, I'll no longer need you. And if I have not enough, I'll feel like I have to do everything myself, and I may actually sin in the process. And here's the beauty of who God is, if you can capture this. The miracle is in the middle. It's trusting. It's doing your part, but also trusting that God would do his. And what's beautiful is that God wants that relationship with you so that he can show you what can be done with your faith in his provision. I think that's what we want, but I think it's what we've yet to submit to. But what I love, and I'm going to continue on again, painting the picture of who God is full circle. I want to share with you a story in John 6. You've heard this, but I hope you see it in a different light. John 6, then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near, and when Jesus looked up, he saw a great crowd coming towards him. He said to Philip, where shall we buy bread for these people to eat? He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Crowds of people, hungry, God, Jesus, bread, test. Any similarities? Verse 9, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? Jesus said, had the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves. He gave thanks and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. And when they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted. So they gathered them, filled 12 baskets with the pieces of 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten. This is incredible. Now, what's interesting is that after that situation, follow me here, after that situation, the people who were part of the 5,000 on the hill, they wanted to find Jesus. So they actually catch up with him later in that chapter, and they have a conversation. And I just have to show you the interaction so you can get a glimpse of what Jesus must have been thinking when they say what they say. John 6, 25 through 26, it says, when they found him on the other side of the lake, they asked him, Rabbi, when did you get here? Jesus answered, very truly, I tell you, you're looking for me, not because of the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and you had your fill. They didn't want Jesus for who he was. They wanted him for what he did for them. Verse 28 and 30, then they asked him, okay, what must we do to do the work God requires? And Jesus answered, this is it. All you got to do, verse 29, this is the gold ticket. Believe the one he has sent. And ironically, verse 30, so they ask him, all right, cool. What sign will you give so that we may see it and believe you? AKA, what will you do? Do you see it? These are the ones, the very people that Jesus just miraculously fed. They're asking Jesus, what will you actually do now so that we can believe you? Do you have an idea of how much patience Jesus has now? Have you ever prayed, God, if you would only do this? God, if you would only come through in this way. Like the people on the hill, I think there are miracles you and I have probably missed in our life because we're so focused on what we want God to do rather than recognizing and praising him for who he's been and what he's been doing in our lives up to this point. Don't miss the miracle of what's next without recognizing who he's been to this entire time. And that's why I love what Jesus says. Jesus doesn't respond frustratedly or hastily, but rather, Colossians says he is the image of the invisible God. He responds with the revelation of who he is. John 6, 31 through 34. The people say, our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness. They even reference it back there. As it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. And Jesus said to them, very truly I tell you, it is not Moses who has given you bread from heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Sir, they said, always give us this bread. Then Jesus declared, I am the bread of life. Now I want you to try to imagine this. Jesus taking, stealing, borrowing the boy's food on the hill. Jesus, the bread of life. In that moment, holding the bread of the boy. From the manna in the wilderness to the miracle on the hill. Jesus knowing that in that moment, he would take what wasn't enough and bless it for thousands. Not so they could see what he could do, but so that they could see with who he is. And it's the same with you and me. By ourselves, you and I, we are nothing. We have no shot at true joy, peace, or fulfillment. But with Jesus, with God as Jireh, he takes the little that we have, the little that we are, and he uses it to bless thousands around us. And I have two very, very simple points that I want you to walk away with today. The first one being very simply that the name Jireh, as you acknowledge God in this way, the name Jireh is not about what God can do. It's simply about who he is. And when that truth settles, get this, when that truth settles, your prayers change. When this truth settles, your prayers change. Because when you are praying to the God of more than enough, it changes the approach of your prayer, just like it did in Agur, Proverbs 30. He didn't ask for this and that and that. He said, God, you know best, give me only what I need. And the truth is, whatever in your life that you think is not enough, Jesus wants in that. Your past, your regrets, your talents, your time. Jesus looks at that space in your life that we sometimes see and label as not enough, and he says, I want to be a part of that. Just like he did with the little boy. He said, you only have 5 loaves and 2 fish? That's all I need. Sit back, watch me work. The little bit that you have to offer, as much as you may doubt it or doubt yourself, he looks at you and he looks at you and me and he says, it's the self-doubt that you have for yourself. That's the area where I can jump in and be enough for you. It's the never feeling good enough area. It's the anxiety attack for me where I can be enough for you. It's the depression, it's your past, it's the unrelenting thoughts that try to end you every day. Let me into that space. You'll experience Jireh. You'll experience how God can be enough for you. My second takeaway. It sounds simple, but I need to say it from stage to you. Stop doubting who you are and what you have to offer. Genuinely stop doubting who you are and what you have to offer. It's maybe a shock to some of you, but for a majority of you, you are the only one in your life who thinks of you the way that you do. The only one. When the God who is more than enough creates you in his image, you need to stop insisting on your flaws so strongly. Stop promoting your past and pushing your weaknesses or excuses in front of you and saying, I can't, I shouldn't, I can't. Do you not think God is fully aware of who you are, what you've done, how you feel, and what you think? It is with that little bit, it's with that not enough that he is wanting, like I said, to come in and use that. Jesus proved it with the 5,000, the feeding of the 5,000. The disciples asked, what are we going to do? Because what they say we can't do anything because we don't have anything. So what did Jesus do? He took a little boy's food. He went to the boy, someone unqualified, unaware, and unprepared. He took the very little that he had, and he blessed thousands. God can use you. He wants to. He can use your gifts, your talents, your past, your time. You just have to be willing to insist that God is greater than your excuse not to be used. So that's my challenge for you, not just this week, but for the way that you see God from here on out.